Hi, my name is Rick Scarborough. I'm president and founder of RecoverAmerica.com, and happy that you're watching this video. For if you are, likely someone who's a friend of this ministry has recommended that you view it. We have been working over the last number of months to try to raise a $2.6 million budget that would more than fund our operation for the entire year, mobilizing pastors across the state with the ultimate objective of moving 1,500 to 2,000 pastors to register people to vote on Election Day 2022, to make sure that their people are well informed on the issues by providing for them 501c3 nonprofit compliant voter guides, which they can hand out in their church family without fear of any kind of compromise. But most importantly, so we can see a transformation in the state of Texas. You know, it's often been said that as Texas goes, so goes the country. A lot of states make that mantra, but there's no path for conservative ideology, and by that I mean not Republican or Democrat, but pro-life and pro-family agendas to go forward if Texas doesn't remain committed to the pro-life and pro-family position. And that doesn't happen by chance. It happens because a majority of Texans who hold those values turn out on Election Day. Ours is an educational operation. We seek to educate pastors on the do's and don'ts legally, as well as the content that we believe is necessary for our country to survive and for our state to flourish. As I make this video, we have just experienced one of the grand advances of the conservative cause in my lifetime. I was alive and active in Christian work in 1973, when out of nowhere the Supreme Court rewrote the laws of the land, found a right that was not in the Constitution, made up a right, and we now have a whole generation of Americans, a generation plus, that's witnessed the abortion of over 60 million unborn children, and women by the millions who claim a right that the Constitution never gave. It's never right to do wrong and never wrong to do right. And now for the first time, because we've played by the rules and elected conservative presidents who've appointed conservative judges, the tide seems to be turning. And even in the very act of the revelation of this upcoming Supreme Court decision that will be unveiled sometime in the near future, the story broke illicitly. Someone did something that had never been done in the history of our courts, and that's leaked the discussions, trying to short-circuit the whole agenda. But by God's grace and by the tenacity of the conservative judges, we're going to get a ruling that's constitutionally grounded. That gives me hope that we're about to see a real revival. That brings me to what I'm doing here today. We need your help. We need godly people to go online to our secure donate button and donate anywhere from $1 million to $5. There's no amount too large, no amount too small. We are gearing up right now for a major step forward as we're going to attempt to bring about 300 pastors to Austin in September. We're going to try to introduce them to our governor and let them have opportunities to ask their questions of the leaders of our state. Our governor, our lieutenant governor, our attorney general, all men who hold conservative values will speak to the pastors who attend. And we're going to scholarship these pastors. We've got donors like you who will underwrite the expenses for them to stay 2 nights in a luxury resort-style hotel so they can get a couple of days of R&R with their families in exchange for about 20 hours of worldview training that will last them a lifetime. You're fixing to watch about 3 minutes of a CNN documentary that was filmed, much to my chagrin initially, as Christiane Amanpour showed up in Pearland, Texas, where I was then the pastor, followed me around the country, which you'll see clips of, where I spoke at various and sundry pro-life and pro-family events. Her agenda was to destroy what we were doing. The discerning Christians across America soon saw through her agenda and saw our agenda, and it caused our ministry to explode in nature. It is not the left that is wrecking the country. It is the Christian who is doing nothing.
Pastor Rick Scarborough is on a crusade across America.
For a Christian not to vote is a sin.
He's traveling the country holding church rallies from now until Election Day 2008.
Here's the danger you need to
see.
Like many of his Christian counterparts, he believes America has lost its moral footing.
Christians don't lose until they quit.
And his mission is to raise an army of Christian voters to fix that.
Evangelical Christians are estimated between 50 and 80 million. We are the largest voting bloc in America. If 75% of them vote their values, we win.
His interest in politics began when he attended an AIDS prevention lecture at his daughter's public high school in Pearland, Texas, which he felt was too explicit and sent an immoral message.
Every form of sex is fair game. Just make sure you use a condom.
Scarborough took his indignation to his congregation.
Never in my entire life have I seen a group of Baptists get so mad. We wound up encouraging our people to run for public office.
Church members took over the local school board and the city council. And while their victory was short-lived, Scarborough had found his calling. He turned to Jerry Falwell for guidance, to take his message national.
And he said, Rick, he said, since you're not well known, what you need are visible people who lend you their name and recognition.
With Falwell's blessing and support, Scarborough started Vision America in 1998.
Talk about 70 Weeks to Save America, One Day Crusade, and so forth.
Its goal, get pastors out from behind the pulpit and involved in politics.
In this wonderful system that we have, he who has the most votes wins. We're better for a pastor to be involved. Put it back!
He's a fixture at places where he sees America's religious foundation under assault. Places like Alabama, where a court ruled that a monument with the 10 Commandments placed on public property was illegal.
If people of faith in this country don't understand at this point it is time to stand up and say enough is enough, then it is lost as a culture.
Carrying on the religious rights war on liberalism, Scarborough accuses America's activist judges of being the problem.
In 1962, it was the judges and not the people who said you cannot pray in public schools. In 1973, it was the judges, not the people, who said that a woman had the right to kill a baby in their womb. It was judges, not the people in Massachusetts, who opened the floodgate for homosexual marriages.
On its face, it is an evil, wicked law.
He gets really riled up about pending congressional legislation that would expand federal hate crimes law to include homosexuals.
I have nothing against homosexuals as people, but it's going to declare that if you preach God's word and say that Romans 1 is applicable to this society and that homosexuality is in fact a sin as the Bible says, you're speaking hate speech, and the next step then is fining the preacher or incarcerating the preacher for speaking out to what he biblically believes.
Critics call that scaremongering. A conservative Christian who wants to impose his moral values on the entire culture. A man who infuriates people.
I'm very sorry about that. I'm infuriated that my children were forced sex education that taught them that anal sex, oral sex, and other forms of sex was just fine.
God Almighty is calling us to be the church of the living God in the public place as well as in the worship place.
Between now and Election Day, Scarborough hopes to speak in person to 140,000 people.
And as the watchman, we must shout the word of warning as we see the danger coming.
That was Vision America. I handed the reins of that ministry over to another, and I went to Washington, D.C. and spent 2 years teaching Bible study to members of Congress, including one that I had baptized while pastor of First Baptist Church of Pearland, Congressman Randy Weber. I also had the joy of teaching Bible studies in Congressman Jody Hice's office. Jody's a congressman from the state of Georgia who, in his book, unbeknown to me, attributed his call from the pulpit to public service, the result of a Ten Commandment rally that Alan Keyes and I conducted at the Barrow County Courthouse in Barrows County, Georgia, back during the Ten Commandment rallies across America as a result of Roy Moore being removed from the Supreme Court Chief Justice seat for posting the Ten Commandments. I've been involved in this work now for more than 30 years. My track record is pure. People know that I do what I say and say what I do, and I'm not bragging about that. I've lived my whole life trying to build a name that could stand the test of time. Our ministry, Recover America, exists to educate and mobilize pastors and their congregations to do 4 things. Pray for and believe God for a third great awakening. We're seeing, I believe, the beginning of that now. To engage in the public square, demanding elections be fair and honest. If you're not conducting fair elections, no matter what you do, you can't win. And then to never forget that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. That quote is attributed to Edmund Burke. Finally, to vote biblically on election day. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 10:13, do all to the glory of God. I think the only thing worse than not voting for a Christian is to vote wrong, and therefore we provide voter guides to show you what the candidates actually believe rather than what they say. The same thing that is happening in Virginia and Colorado schools, I might add, is happening right here in Texas, and I'm going to show you that. Beloved, we're not losing our children in the universities. We're losing them in the elementary schools and middle schools of America. Our children are not learning the basics of education, but rather they're being indoctrinated and sexualized and taught how to choose their own gender, denying God's very natural order of biology. We expose that, and we're calling them into account. The Texas Scorecard puts out a monthly publication, and on the cover of that publication was this recent photo. The headline of the article says, School District tells 4-year-olds to keep Pride Week lessons a secret. And you can see in the rainbow colors the shush sign as kids were told to lie basically to their parents. Don't tell them what you're being taught. You can read the quote at your leisure. We have found that while researching Texas ISDs, public schools are failing our children and are physically irresponsible. They're teaching critical race theory no matter what the educators may try to tell you. They're embracing no place for hate, and I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. The radical LGBTQ agenda is directing much of the education of our children now, and libraries across the state are carrying objectionable, pornographic books for children. What is No Place for Hate? If you look at the circle at the top, this is taken from the Anti-Defamation League website on No Place for Hate. It's their program. One of the things they teach you is how to address the new terminology of today's education. Bisexual, transgender, etc., etc. Some of the examples of inappropriate books that we found on the library shelves in our public schools. Losing the Girl with LGBTQ characters. Lawn Boy, graphic descriptions of sex between men and children. Gender Queer, explicit cartoons of oral sex and use of toys. Everybody Sees the Ants, the story of the gang rape of a boy in a locker room, and many other examples. I ask you straight up, is this what you want your children being taught in the elementary ages? I'm a grandparent, about to be a great-grandparent. I'm living my life to stop this absurd attack on the innocence of our children. Will the church rise up and say enough is enough? Well, my answer to that is we won't do it now, we never will. I believe we shall. Here was the high school, Pearland High School, where 30 years ago, this very year, I took my stand. I discovered that there was an unbelievable agenda being advanced in our high school through a public school assembly. And I see now in hindsight that it was God's preparation for me for this current fight we're engaged in. For 30 years ago, I was shocked at the content of an indecent high school assembly. I took it to our people, and our people got involved. Change happens when people get involved. We took over the school board with members of our church. We then took over the city council with members of our church, and that resulted in a transformation in the suburb of Houston called Pearland, where just recently one of the young men I ordained as a 30-year-old deacon became the mayor of that fastest-growing suburb in the Houston Metroplex. In the Houston Independent School District and also the Cy-Fair School District last fall, we engaged in getting Christians to vote their values. And in what some people said couldn't happen, we saw 2 conservatives for the first time in decades elected to the Houston ISD. And all 3 open seats in the Cy-Fair School Board, we replaced liberals with conservative Christian trustees who are now taking No Place for Hate and critical race theory out of that school system. We found in the Dallas ISD no Place for Hate. In fact, they had a number of schools in that school system when we researched them, already displaying the banners and the awards for No Place for Hate. This is right off the DISD school board website, bragging that they're a part. When you hear the terms transgendered, this is the textbooks and the kinds of things we're showing our kids. The top is a woman becoming a man, and the bottom is a man becoming a woman. Is this what we want our kids to learn in the public school system, beginning in preschool? Smart. Now, you'll love this. This was taken right off the website of the HISD, where the kids were instructed that for $125 for guys who like guys, they can simply fill out questionnaires, give some feedback to the LGBTQ community, and they in turn will receive $125 for taking this curriculum. Can you imagine that we're paying these kids to learn how to indulge in a behavior that God forbids? Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who died at the hands of the Germans in a death camp, enslaved there because he had the audacity to confront Adolf Hitler for his crimes, said these words: "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." And then in Exodus chapter 18, Jethro admonished Moses, "But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men, who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens." Our founding fathers took that principle and built first our national government, thousands, then our state government, hundreds, then our county governments, fifties, and finally our local government, tens. The principle being some men and women are capable or have the means and the wherewithal to govern thousands, while others more adequately address tens or fifties. The principle being that there's a delineation of the responsibilities as well as the accountability of these elected officials, but all of them appointed by godly men who elect them to those offices or elect those who appoint them to those offices. That's the principle of America, and that's what Recover America works to bring back. That's why I need your help. We are endeavoring right now to honor the words of John Jay, our first Supreme Court Justice. Think about this. Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty as well as the privilege and the interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers. And then Daniel Webster, one of our founding fathers, who authored America's first exhaustive dictionary, wrote, "Whatever makes men good Christians makes them good citizens." Beloved, you and I are striving to be good citizens, and we must strive to restore our country. The slide that you're now looking at is a reenactment, a picture of one of our founding fathers. His name was John Peter Muhlenberg. He was a Lutheran minister, the son of the father of the Lutheran movement in America. His brother Augustus Muhlenberg pastored a church over in New York while he pastored in Virginia. On a given Sunday, he preached from the 3rd chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes in that famous passage where it says, "There's a time for peace and a time for war." And then to make his point, he reached up and unveiled that under his clerical robe was in fact the uniform of a Continental soldier. He marched out with 300 of his men to join General George Washington as a colonel in his army. In the final days of the war, he aspired to the rank of general, became a part of General Washington's staff, and in the famous picture where the English troops lay down their arms, he's pictured on his horse right behind George Washington. He went on to serve as an elected representative and served out his days in government, as did his brother Augustus, who initially excoriated him for doing what he did in his Virginia church. He said, "How dare you leave the ministry for a lower calling?" But when the British troops marched into New York and burned down the church of Augustus, he then changed his tune. He too joined General Washington's army. He too served as the first Speaker of the House of the brand new constituted republic where he served out his days. Beloved, Christians have always been involved in government. Pastors have a role to play. We're not to abandon our calling, but rather see that the full measure of our calling is to educate the church to be leaders in our government by electing godly men and by taking our place on the wall. I need your help. It's going to cost $2.6 million to fully engage this state. It's a huge state, thousands of cities, hundreds of county seat towns, and we're going to cover as many of them as we physically can. But I need your help. I need to staff up quickly. We've got a modicum of staff now, but as soon as the dollars come in, we hire more and we extend our reach. I believe between now and Election Day, with your help, we can connect over 1,000 to 2,000 pastors, and if they are fully engaged, America will see the effects in a revived state of Texas that shows forth a model for the rest of the nation to follow. Help me get this job done. No gift is too small nor too great. We have a need, and we're looking for God to supply. God bless you. Go to recoveramerica.com. There is a red button that you can press for online safe giving. We need your help, and we need it now. God bless you. recoveramerica.com is the website.